Hari Om, my dear divine soul, greetings and salutations. I have carefully selected key verses from the Bhagavad Gītā and trying to present my insights for your esteemed consideration. Today, we will be talking on Bhagavad Gītā verse number 1 from chapter 1. Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samvetayuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiv Kim Akurvat Sanjay Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samvetayuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiv Kim Kuruvat Sanjay. The translation of this verse is Dhritarashtra said, what did my people and the sons of Pandu do when desirous to fight? They assembled together on the holy plain of Kurukshetra, O Sanjay. The blind king Dhritarashtra, the blind mind, inquired through the honest Sanjay, impartial introspection, when my offspring, the Kurus, the wicked, impulsive mental and sense tendencies, and the sons of the virtuous Pandu, the pure, discriminative tendencies, gathered together on the Dharmakshetra, which is holy plain of Kurukshetra, the bodily field of activity. Eager to do battle for supremacy, what was the outcome? Sanjay means literally completely victorious, one who has conquered himself. He alone, who is not self-centered, has the ability to see clearly and to be impartial. Thus, in the Gita, Sanjay is divine insight for the aspiring devotee. Sanjay represents the power of impartial intuitive self-analysis, discerning introspection. It is the ability to stand aside, observe oneself without any prejudice, and judge accurately. Thoughts may be present without one's conscious awareness. Introspection is that power of intuition by which the consciousness can watch its thoughts. It does not reason, it feels, not with biased emotion, but with clear, calm intuition. This inquiry by Dhritarashtra, the blind king, symbolizes the ignorance and attachment within the human mind that blinds us to the greater truths of life. Dhritarashtra's concern for my people reflects attachment and ego, highlighting the self-centeredness that often drives human motivation. The battlefield of Kurukshetra, here described as holy, serves as a metaphor for life itself. A field where opposing forces of the soul's virtues and the ego's desires collide. Dhritarashtra's blindness signifies the blindness of ignorance, especially when clouded by attachment and selfish ambition. His question to Sanjay opens a narrative that not only sets the stage for a great war, but also frames the battlefield as a realm for spiritual evolution, where choices between righteousness, which is dharma, and attachment are made. The principle hidden in this verse is the conflict between attachment and wisdom, and the necessity of awareness to guide actions. Dhritarashtra's question implies an inquiry into human desires, familial attachments, and the moral ambiguities that arise in life's holy battlefield. His blindness and the invocation of Sanjay, who has divine vision, represent two contrasting states. One who lives in ignorance and clings to personal attachments, and one who perceives truth objectively. Thus, this verse teaches that wisdom and inner detachment are essential to navigate life's conflicts, highlighting the ultimate pursuit of self realization. Dhritarashtra's words reveal the mindset of one who is deeply enmeshed in worldly attachments and concerns. His use of the term my people reflects not only familial attachment but also the egoic tendency to create divisions and distinctions. This distinction subtly represents the limitations of the ego, which divides and claims rather than harmonizes and releases. The attachment is to his sons, his kingdom, and his pride, but it blinds him to the ethical and spiritual dimensions of the conflict. Despite Kurukshetra being a holy plain where battles for righteousness have historically been fought, Dhritarashtra's mind is focused on the outcome as it pertains to his family's prestige and survival, rather than universal justice or dharma. Dhritarashtra's blindness is physical, but symbolically it extends to a blindness of understanding. His lack of sight represents the state of avidya, which is ignorance, which veils the true nature of the self. This blindness is contrasted with Sanjay's ability to see the events on the battlefield clearly, suggesting a deeper clarity and insight that Dhritarashtra lacks. Sanjay, who serves as a narrator, represents the voice of wisdom that can perceive reality without attachment. Thus, Dhritarashtra's request to Sanjay can be seen as the egoic mind seeking guidance from the inner wisdom, though he still asks from a perspective steeped in attachment. The holy plain of Kurukshetra further amplifies the idea of life as a battleground where the soul must contend with lower impulses and egoic attachments. In calling the battlefield holy, the verse hints that conflicts themselves are sacred when they lead to self purification and the establishment of dharma. The sacredness of Kurukshetra underscores that true battles, whether internal or external, can be opportunities for profound spiritual growth, provided they are approached with right intention and wisdom. Dhritarashtra's desire to know what did my people and the sons of Pandu do? Reflects his curiosity. Yet it is also tainted by partiality. The Bhagavad Gītā unfolds this dialogue to show that attachment obscures impartial wisdom, while spiritual insight, like that of Sanjay, brings a higher understanding. Thus, his question indirectly sets the stage for the spiritual teachings that Krishna will impart to Arjun, teachings that transcend familial, social, and personal boundaries and point to universal truths about duty, selflessness, and the realization of one's eternal nature. The first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, spoken by Dhritarashtra, sets the stage for an epic dialogue of spiritual wisdom. His question reveals the dichotomy of dharma, righteousness, and adharma, unrighteousness, and underscores the eternal conflict between material attachment and spiritual duty. It reflects the human tendency to seek clarity when confronted with internal and external turmoil, inviting a deeper inquiry into life's purpose. This verse is spoken by the blind king Dhritarashtra, addressing his charioteer and confident Sanjay. The inquiry is about the events on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, a sacred field symbolizing dharma, where two families, his sons, who are called Kauravas, and the sons of Pandu are called Pandavas, stand ready for war. The components of the verse provide profound spiritual lessons. Number one, Dharma Kshetra, field for righteousness. The battlefield is not just a physical space, but a metaphor for the human mind and heart, where conflicts between right and wrong, duty and desire take place. The reference to Kurukshetra as a holy plain signifies the potential for inner purification and the ultimate triumph of dharma. Number two, samveta yuyutsavaha means desirous to fight. The assembly of warriors reflects life's inevitable struggles. The intent to fight is symbolic of human resolve to face challenges, whether they may be material, emotional, or spiritual. Number three, Mamkaha Pandavaschaiv means my people and the sons of Pandu. Dhritarashtra's language reveals attachment and partiality. By referring to the Kauravas as my people and the Pandavas as sons of Pandu, he highlights the human tendency to cling to one's own interests, often at the cost of impartiality and righteousness. Number four, Kim Akurvat Sanjay means what did they do? This question is not merely about physical action, but an inquiry into the nature of human behavior under pressure. It suggests an implicit fear in Dhritarashtra's mind, stemming from his attachment to his sons and an awareness of their moral shortcomings. Now, let us see what are the spiritual teachings from this verse. Teaching number one, the blindness of attachment. Dhritarashtra's physical blindness symbolizes the spiritual blindness caused by attachment, ego, and ignorance. His inability to perceive the dharmic path demonstrates the need for inner vision, which is cultivated through self awareness and spiritual practice. Teaching number two, the role of a sacred setting. Kurukshetra as a dharmakshetra reminds us that sacred spaces, whether physical or mental, amplify the consequences of our choices. The field of righteousness symbolizes the transformative potential of life's struggles when approached with sincerity. Teaching number three, the dual forces of good and evil. The assembly of the two sides reflects the dualities in human nature. The Kauravas represent desires, greed, and the ego, while the Pandavas embody virtues, selflessness, and devotion to duty. Life's spiritual journey involves recognizing and resolving these opposing forces within oneself. Teaching number four, inquiry as the beginning of wisdom. Dhritarashtra's question, despite its flaws, marks the starting point of a spiritual dialogue. Inquiry and self reflection are essential for overcoming ignorance and attaining higher understanding. Now, let us discuss on what to follow and how to implement it in life. Number one, develop inner vision. Recognize and transcend your attachment. Reflect on where personal biases cloud your judgment and cultivate objectivity by aligning your actions with dharma. Number two, embrace challenges as sacred opportunities. Approach life's struggles as opportunities for growth and purification. Remember that the battlefield of Kurukshetra is within you, and every challenge is a test of character. Number three, seek guidance. Dhritarashtra relied on Sanjay for clarity. Similarly, seek wisdom from spiritual texts, teachers, and your own higher self to navigate life's complexities. Number four, cultivate inquiry. Adopt a questioning mind, not out of doubt, but as a means to deeper understanding. Ask yourself, am I acting according to dharma? What motivates my choices? Now, we will discuss some examples for better understanding this verse number one from chapter one. Point number one, personal life. Consider a scenario where you are torn between helping a colleague aligned with dharma and advancing your career at their expense, aligned with personal gain. By reflecting on Dhritarashtra's partiality, you can learn to overcome selfish tendencies and choose the righteous path. Number two, historical example. Mahatma Gandhi often referred to the Bhagavad Gītā in his life. When faced with the choice of passive acceptance of injustice or active non-violent resistance, he chose the latter, embodying Dharma Kshetra call to action. Point number three, daily practice. In meditation, visualize Kurukshetra within your mind. Identify the forces of ego and virtue battling within and consciously affirm your commitment to dharma. Now let us see some more examples. Number one, attachment in the face of ethical decisions. In a modern context, consider a business leader faced with a decision that affects both family members employed in the company and the welfare of a larger community. Dhritarashtra's approach would resemble the leader's dilemma if they prioritize family interests over community welfare, acting from attachment rather than impartial ethical reasoning. However, wisdom calls for viewing the decision through a lens of righteousness, which is dharma. Much like Sanjay's perspective, allowing impartial decisions based on the greater good. Point number two, inner conflict of righteousness versus ego. The Kurukshetra battlefield can also symbolize the internal struggles each person faces between righteous intentions and selfish desires. For example, a person might feel called to speak out against an injustice in their community, but hesitate out of fear of losing social status or relationships. Here, Dhritarashtra's blindness is analogous to the ego's reluctance to see truth and his attachment to my people mirrors the inner resistance to breaking free from familiar bonds that may prevent action aligned with dharma. Point number three, overcoming personal bias for spiritual clarity. Just as Dhritarashtra calls upon Sanjay's vision to see what he cannot, an individual can seek guidance from inner wisdom, a mentor, or a spiritual practice to gain clarity beyond personal biases. For instance, in moments of emotional turmoil, where clarity is clouded by attachments or ego driven desires. Stepping back to engage in reflection or meditation can offer an objective perspective mirroring Sanjay's role as the seer. Point number four, the role of detachment in leadership. In leadership, Dhritarashtra's attachment can be compared to leaders who make decisions based on favoritism, favoritism rather than merit. Leaders can look to Sanjay's objective perspective as a model of detachment, making fair decisions in alignment with collective welfare. Dhritarashtra's perspective represents what leaders must transcend to foster an environment of fairness and justice. Point number five, the conflict within the self. Kurukshetra can be compared to the inner conflicts that an individual faces. Much like Dhritarashtra's desire to know the outcome of the war, the seeker often finds themselves anxious about the fruits of their actions. This mirrors the verses of the Bhagavad Gītā, where Krishna advises Arjun to act without attachment, focusing solely on the action itself rather than its result. That is in Bhagavad Gītā, chapter 2, verse number 47. Your right is to perform your duties, but never to its fruits. The spiritual seeker must learn to direct their attention away from external results and towards selfless dharmic action. Point number six, the war of desires. Just as the battle between the Kauravas and Pandavas is a reflection of external conflict, it is also a metaphor for the war within the mind of every person. In the Bhagavad Gītā, Krishna tells Arjun that the greatest war is the one fought within the self, between the lower self, which is the ego and desires, and the higher self, which is the soul's connection to divine truth. This is captured in verses such as Bhagavad Gītā, chapter number 3, verse number 36, where Arjun asks, O Krishna, why does a person commit sin, even unwillingly, by being forced, as it were, by a hidden power? Krishna answers that it is the result of desires and passions that drag one into sin. Point number seven, blindness to dharma. Dhritarashtra's literal blindness also serves as a metaphor for spiritual blindness. His inability to perceive the righteousness of the situation, or his failure to realize the deeper divine nature of his predicament, reflects the ignorant state of an individual who is not attuned to their true nature. The Bhagavad Gita emphasizes the importance of developing discernment, which is vivek, to see beyond the illusions of the material world and to understand the eternal truths of the soul. Let us see have we learned from this verse 1 of chapter 1? Like a conclusion, Dhritarashtra's question, though rooted in personal attachment and ignorance, serves as a profound opening to the Bhagavad Gita's teachings. It invites us to reflect on the inner conflicts we face and the sacredness of life's challenges. By cultivating inquiry, detachment, and alignment with Dharma, we too can navigate the battlefield of life with wisdom and grace. Through the character of Dhritarashtra, the Gita reveals how ego and familial attachments obstruct inner clarity, whereas Sanjay symbolizes the wisdom and detachment necessary to perceive reality as it is. This opening question thus serves as a profound reminder to seek a vision that transcends personal attachments, enabling a life rooted in wisdom and dharma. Hari Om.